Hello and welcome. My name is Carol Carter and I'm the founder and the CEO of Global Minded. We are focused on creating a capable, diverse talent pipeline to get more women, people of color, underrepresented, first gen out of high school and to college or into the world of work, into economic mobility and the leadership pipeline. We do this in a number of different ways. We have an annual event every year. It's morphing during COVID-19. We have Inclusive Leader Awards recognizing role models in different areas. We have programs at 15 different colleges around the country, serving the historically Black colleges, the minority serving colleges, and the Hispanic serving institutions. And we have a first gen leadership class where we connect students to role models, mentors, internships, and jobs. So if you'd like more information, you can go to our website for Global Minded, but we're really delighted over the next 8 weeks, a lot of people in our community have stepped up to be supportive of teachers and students in a number of different ways. And so we have a really wonderful program for you today. It's called Managing Stress and Uncertainty as Education Professionals. So many of you, I just want to acknowledge, are holding up so many people. You're also, many of you have children that are young or teenagers or college students that are not that thrilled about being back in your homes, and you're having to keep everybody resilient and upbeat. And it's hard sometimes for people to have time for themselves. So I just want to introduce to you Kelly and Sonya. Kelly Knoche is the founder of the Teaching Well, a multi-leveled systematic approach to bringing wellness back into school systems. In this role, she has mentored hundreds of teachers, led trainings to thousands, and has built an organization committed to living its values of honest communication, somatic embodiment, and transparency. Kelly recently completed a fellowship with TEL, Transformative Educational Leadership, which brought educational leaders together from across the country to support equitable, large-scale, systematic change in K-12 education. Sonya Mehta lives, works, and engages in the educational justice movement in Oakland, California. She is working to grow and scale the Teaching Well's powerful work to enable schools and networks to more effectively support, retain, and leverage the brilliance of their educators. Prior to joining Teaching Well, Sonya worked on educational policy and taught at the Title I school in the Fruitvale neighborhood of Oakland for 5 years, where she worked to launch a variety of programs, including the school's first ever educational garden and a leadership pathway program for parent leaders. So I met these fabulous women last fall, and I got to see their work firsthand, and I'm just so delighted that they're part of this bigger network of Global Minded. And thank you for both being here, and we're looking forward to your session today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carol, for the introduction. And what I was sharing with Carol before the session started was just the amazing resilience that she has shown as a leader to be able to take this amazing conference. I was so excited to join and find a way to make it virtual and still move her mission forward. And so thank you so much for having us here today. Once again, I'm Kelly Knoche. I'm the executive director of the Teaching Well, and our goal is to create thriving school systems by focusing on adult well-being and healthy communication. You are frontline care providers, and even if you are in a role that's not exactly on the front lines, all of us who are in service to marginalized populations it is critical that we care for ourselves and we care for those around us in an equal and reciprocal way. And Sonya, maybe you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll move to the agreements for our call today.
Sure, thank you. My name is Sonya Mehta, and I am the Director of Partnerships at the Teaching Well. I think one thing I want to lift up about our team is that we are all former teachers who had our own experiences with chronic stress, burnout, reactivity in the classroom, and just recognized the deep and profound relationship between caring for ourselves and attending to our own stress signals and the impact that has on the communities that we serve. So we are taking a large systemic problem of high teacher turnover, teacher burnout, and the solution that we've developed is a very humanizing, interpersonal set of trainings, coaching sessions, and just ways to ways to support the educator communities that serve young people. So at the very end of our session today, we'll give you some opportunities to stay engaged with us, but we're really excited to be here. Thank you.
Beautiful. And for those of you that just joined us, we would love for you to reference the chat box and introduce yourself, where you're from, what your role is, so we all know who we're in community with. And if you scroll up to the very top of the chat box, for those of you that like to follow along on your own for the PowerPoint we're presenting today, that is linked at the top, and Sonya can relink it again. For those of us as the chat box come through. I'm going to begin to share my screen, and like, you know, as Sonya said, we are former teachers, so you will be gracious with us as we, you know, both share agreements and we bring art into our work and allow you different modalities and ways to connect into this work. All right, can someone give me a thumbs up if they can see my screen so I know that we're all seeing the right thing? Awesome, so I'm going to present it now. And I'm just so excited to be here and that you are investing, you know, 50 minutes of your time today to learn a little bit more about how to care for yourself in the context of caring for other people. These agreements are opportunities for you to care for yourself during this time. We are in a place where we are on Zoom and on computers all the time. So I want to really, these agreements are slightly shifted from our norm, but feel really important. So first, be body liberatory. What that means is do what you need to do in your body to care for yourself during this 50 minutes. I know I'm sure on the other ends of this webinar, you're caring for other people and are really attuned to others' needs. I invite you to take this time to be body liberatory. So that might mean that you turn your camera off if you need to make big movements, because that does have an impact on other people in the group. But go to the bathroom, get some food, get a drink, find a way to care for your needs and trust your body's intuition of what's needed right now. Two, I just invite you to be open to learning. We understand as facilitators that we are in a room full of experts. And so you're on this webinar to learn more, and also you have a lot to share. So we really invite you to go into the chat box and to ask questions, but also to answer questions through this webinar so that you're really getting your needs met and that you're being able to share your expertise, because we really are going to be doing this together and providing care, collective care today. I also want to just invite that we want to respect our growth zone. So you can imagine that, has anyone heard of the zone of proximal development? I'll scroll through to see if I have any hands raised. Awesome. So the zone of proximal development is a way teachers use to understand how we can amplify the maximum amount of learning for our students. So you have your comfort zone, which we'll say is the circle. And then you have this outside area that's just outside your comfort zone where you're growing and learning as a professional. And anything outside of this second circle right here is what we would call the grown zone, or ouch. If you feel anytime during this presentation that what I'm inviting you to do doesn't feel comfortable in your body, I really invite you to trust your body and to maybe have an exit ramp in mind. So that could be, you know, taking off your earbuds for a second and coming and rejoining us. That could look like just taking a few moments to go inward or not following our directions. And these exit ramps are really important when we're teaching mindfulness across difference or in communities where we're new, because since we aren't in full relationship, I don't know all of you just yet, we want to really make sure that everyone has sovereignty as we go to these mindfulness and connected spaces, and they know that their body is the main leader of that. And then the last piece is just to ask for what you need. We would love for you to use the chat box feature. Sonya is going to be exploring the chat box, and she's going to be interacting and co-hosting with me today. And as always, please offer your expertise so you can meet another person's need, because we all are finding ways to care for ourselves in this time. And with that said, I'm going to pass it off to Sonya to lead us through a mindfulness activity today.
Thanks, Kelly. So as an organization, every time we work with teachers and leaders and even all of our internal work, we always start with body-based somatic and mindfulness practices. So we wanted to give you a window into that today before we share some content with you. So just for this portion, if you have your camera on, you can actually just turn it off to have a little bit more space. And I invite you, everything that I'll share in this meditation is an invitation. So you know your body best, you know your needs best. And as Kelly shared, we've been exploring the use of exit ramps as a team. So, so take a moment to just think about what your personal exit ramp could be during this practice. If something starts to feel uncomfortable, you could open your eyes, take a look around, stand up, stretch, get a drink of water, anything that you know will reset your system. So just take a moment to think about that. And as we think of our exit ramps, we're going to close our eyes if that feels comfortable. And if not, just looking, softening our gaze just a few feet ahead of us, and see if you can adjust your body in your chair to allow for a little bit more space. And we're just going to take a moment to follow our breath into our body and use the breath as a gateway for deeper understanding of what's happening inside our really brilliant, intelligent bodies. We're going to explore how the breath feels moving in and out of the nose and mouth, how it feels in the throat, using it to open any constrictions in a gentle, easeful way, how it feels in the chest, in the belly. If it's comfortable, you can put one hand on the chest or the belly and just experience the rising and falling sensation. This wave, this breath that is holding us. So we'll observe the sensations of our body with awareness and compassion and non-judgment. And just a reminder that by deepening the ways that we care for ourselves, we deepen our capacity to care for one another and for our communities. So we'll just take another moment to breathe here. Feeling the rising and falling sensation. And now with the eyes still closed, we'll just begin to bring a little bit of movement into the upper body. Maybe rolling the shoulders, the neck, seeing if we can soften the jaw, the space between our brows, even seeing if we can soften our ears as we bring a gentle smile to the face. And now fluttering the eyes open and taking a moment to look around your environment and find something red. Just allow your gaze to rest on that something red, using the spectrum of light as our guide. Then moving your gaze to something orange. Now finding something yellow. Something green. Something blue. And finally, something purple. And now from the space of groundedness, centeredness, more space in the body, coming back to your computer, back to connection with this community of education leaders from all over the country. And just noticing how your body might feel different and how you might be more receptive and open to learning something new. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Kelly, who is going to share a bit of the frameworks, the mindsets, the tools that we use at the Teaching Well with all of you. Oh, Kelly, you can unmute.
Thank you, Sonya. I'm so grateful for that extra time. And then I'm really into this light spectrum mindfulness activity that Sonya introduced to our community. And so I'm so grateful she shared it with us today. And, when mindfulness as an invitation is an invitation to observe the body and what life is offering us right now. When I first started on my mindfulness journey as an educator in my early 20s, I had this idea that I would mindfulness my way into pure happiness all the time. And if anything, this ride has shown me is it's really about greeting all of the emotions that arrive in our life, all of the uncertainty that arises in our life, and be able to just be with it. And so the course of this time is to be able to help you with some tools, to be able to be with it and to be able to move back towards the center of yourself and towards well-being and vitality. When we do mindfulness practices at the Teaching Well, one of the things we're trying to increase is we're trying to increase emotional and body literacy. So many of us, especially frontline educators, have actually been trained to disregard our body, whether that means postponing going to the bathroom, or that means eating lunch in 5 minutes and you're in between recess and accepting your class back. We have all been able to kind of like soften the noise on our body until we get home. And while that's been really important for the system as it currently is today, it actually is disconnecting us from some of the beautiful signs that our body will tell us when something is out of alignment. And when we quiet that too much, we actually can start behaving towards students, towards our colleagues, towards our partners at home in ways that don't align with our values. And so this is a tool that we use that you'll see on the screen of how our body speaks to us. And I just invite you to explore maybe what your body was speaking to you during this mindfulness activity. And you can put it in the chat box if you'd like. And the second place that we always go is going into gratitude or acknowledgement of the larger context of our work. So I think the first thing that we want to say, and this is an Oakland-based graph because that's where our home base is, but we really want to thank state and city systems for flattening the curve in California and acting quickly. We also want to thank front care healthcare providers and frontline educators who are dynamically changing the field of education so that it can serve students and keep academic learning continuing. And at that same time, as this shows you from Oakland Voices newsletter, is that the cases of coronavirus are still falling along lines of socioeconomic class and race in disproportionate ways. And so while we are really incredibly grateful for the work that has been done at a systemic level, we know there's a lot of work to do in order for our society to be just and caring for all people equally. And that felt like we couldn't go further without sharing that context. And when we think about our work in terms of being frontline educators, and whether that means that you're in the K-12 system, you're a social worker, you're a therapist, you're a company that works for education, or you're in the 12 through 16 range, we are all facing uncertain times, and our bodies and our emotions are getting put to the test. And so I'd love to do one of the ways that we at the Teaching Well and thousands of other educators now get to start talking about stress before stress becomes overwhelming is this tool called the human function curve. And I'd love for you in the chat box to put a 0 to 3, 0 meaning I've never seen this image before, and 3 meaning I've not only seen it, but I've done work around it and I understand how my body and experience maps to the human function curve. And Sonya, since I'm sharing my screen, I cannot see the chat box. Can you tell me what the average number is? Oh, you're on mute.
A couple of 2s and 3s, mostly 0s.
Amazing. Okay, great. So for those of you that are 2s and 3s, I invite you to lift your expertise in the chat box if anyone has questions. And, you know, as someone who's worked with this visual for 10 years, I still am greeted anew each and every day with this work. So I give you permission to explore anew in this moment. So the human function curve is an image created in cardiology. And it is the image of how your heart effectively pumps blood through your body based on the amount of stress signals it receives from your brain. Now, how does this map to a larger context? First, the term stress is a cardiology term. And when it was originally coined, all it meant was the desire to act or perform. And so when we think about the heart, and this actual design was created by Peter Nixon in the 1970s, and he coined it, his whole paper was titled, A Paradigm for Our Time. So he already saw the metaphor that was present in this visual. But if we look at the y-axis, it means our ability to effectively perform at any stressor that comes our way. The x-axis is stress, how many signals or how many things that we want to act and perform for. And as you can see, it's a gentle slope up. So every stressor that we receive, we increase in performance up to this point where we get to this blue area called the creative calm zone. And that means we're working between 75% to 100% of our performance capacity. And we start seeing this slope level off. And if we are in tune with our body, we will start getting signals from our body or from our emotions that we've passed our peak level of performance and that we need to actually relinquish stress, relinquish acts to perform for in order to come back to peak performance. So in the dream world, we're all hanging out in this blue circle. But for many of us, especially frontline care providers, where we have muted or toned down the connection to our body and our emotions and have such a strong need to serve other people because there is so much need to serve, we continue to take on stressors with this intended performance. But then the actual outcome in our bodies can look a little bit more like this orange curve, where we are cycling at maybe 60 to 70% of our effectiveness, our vitality, our joy in our life, because we've taken on more stressors than our body and our emotions and our mind can actually handle with the grace that we can possibly take on. Now, one of the things that has come up over our webinars is a sense of guilt that potentially comes up for people, especially frontline care providers, of caring for themselves. And so I always invite on this curve that, educators have a fear, well, if I actually took this time off, I'd be on the left side of this curve where I actually wouldn't be performing for my students. I could be taking on more, I'd be selfish. And we just really want to invite in this moment that in this time of pandemic, in this time of great change, no matter what your role is, you taking 5, 10 minutes, an hour to reset your nervous system is not putting you anywhere near the left side of this curve. Right? And what it's actually doing is your body is actually inviting you to listen to its intelligence and increase in performance by moving left on the human function curve. And so when I'm talking about stress during these times, it might be coming to you in a different way or a different word. So uncertainty, having a loss of routine, meaning that you have so many options, that's actually stressors where you're having to now decide what you do at 10 a.m. Whereas before 10 a.m. was right before recess, or 10 a.m. was right after your staff meeting on Tuesdays, right? So these lack of routines, COVID-19, the fear of getting sick, connecting with humans through screens, blending home and work life, these are all new ways that the world is asking us to perform. And so our body doesn't evaluate which ones are more important. Our body receives all of them as desires, equal desires to act and perform. And so it's actually really important that we might need even more sleep. We might even need a little bit more time to care for ourselves than normal because of the massive amounts of uncertainty or learning new that we're doing at this moment. And so when we have this invitation, we get to practice any way and any time that we can to move left on the human function curve. This is not a static graph. This is not like we are stuck on the graph and we can't move. This is a dynamic metaphor, and it allows us to consider that if we continue to practice moving left in a society, and especially as a service provider in a society that constantly asks us to do more with less, that we are actually dramatically improving our performance for those that we serve. And so the following components are how we can move left on the curve. But before I move forward, are there any questions, Sonya, that you're seeing in the chat box that I can clarify at this time? No questions.
Yeah,
okay.
No questions yet.
Awesome.
But feel free to add questions, reflections, noticings, and I'll be monitoring this space.
Beautiful. Okay. So the first thing that we can do to be able to know where we are in the human function curve is to observe. So that means just taking a moment, being like, what do I feel like in my body right now? What are the emotions that are underlying my feelings during the Zoom meeting? What's my to-do list doing, and is it constantly running? And just noticing that, right? There's nothing, this might be the only practice. If you leave with just this practice today, there will be a lot of success, because this is the richness and the fullness of the practice, is to be in an observation without judgment and with as much compassion as possible. The second component is to, with that compassion, receive, accept, embrace what is true for you in this moment. It doesn't need to be true in a comparative stance to somebody else. It doesn't need to, Brene Brown talks about comparative suffering, and how those of us that have maybe stable jobs or our frontline care providers that are safer than the people that we serve, that we at times can actually stop caring for ourselves out of a feeling of guilt or a feeling of comparative suffering. And so one of the best parts of a mindfulness practice is to be able to acknowledge and embrace what our feelings are, because if we don't, they get in the way of us serving other people. And so for some of us, embrace might be a word that we don't want to say when we feel angry or when we feel like we want to cry, right? But receiving it and accepting it might be words that are more accessible to you. And if there's any other word that resonates with you that are not these three, please share it in the chat box so someone else can have that kind of connection. And once we've observed and we've accepted or embraced what is true in this moment, rather than reacting because the body or the emotions are so full and so intense that we can't do anything but get angry or do anything but fall asleep for 15 hours, right? I'm going to invite us to be in that moment and act from that place, from the earliest signals that we can find inside our body and our emotions, to be able to act from there. And so I have given us a list of 5 different ways that we can act, and I'm going to dive into those ways. But we can organize, we can breathe, we can move, we can speak, and we can create. And I want to share one of the ways. I think you might see a crutch in the background. 1 week before shelter in place, I broke my ankle severely and had surgery. And so I'm a mover and a breather as a way to transmute collective trauma or things that are overwhelming in my life. And so I have had a generous invitation to expand my toolkit and find other ways that I could care for myself. And so, as you can see, art has been one of those ways of self-expression in this work. And so I think that's the first thing that I want to share, is that none of these are better than the other. We all are unique individuals with a unique composition of what creates soothing and creates alignment in our system. And so I invite you to try all of these on and see which ones resonate for your body, knowing that I have not filled out the answer to self-care or the answer to co or self-regulation inside of this image. So the first one we practice today is breathing. So what a beautiful meditation that Sonya led us on, where we got 3 to 5 minutes to come back to ourselves and find our natural rhythm in our breath. It could be as short as 3 deep breaths. It could be using a guided meditation tool like Calm, Headspace, Audible, Insight Timer. And if breathing and meditation don't feel like safe spaces for you, and for some of us that isn't a safe space to go to, I really invite you to let your body take over and take a nap. Or because of all of the interaction on screens, our eyes are in overwhelm, that you go on, sit in your chair. It could be as simple as sitting in your chair and just covering your eyes for 30 seconds. And if you just cover your eyes, maybe you join me right now in covering your eyes. Noticing the sensation around the eyelids. And taking a deep breath in with me. And letting it out. One more breath. And if you're comfortable with your makeup, you could do a gentle eye massage on the outside, the temples, right at the outside edges of your eyes, at the edge of the hairline, and then right where the ears and the jaw meet. It's a really good place to just do small circles. When you're ready, opening your eyes. So that example of just closing my eyes allowed me to tune inward. And our eyes actually, when we're looking at screens, we blink half as much as we normally do, and so our eyes can dry out. So closing your eyes just for a minute can allow the natural tear ducts, the natural water in our eyes, to replenish our eyes and connect back. The second place that I go in these is to move. So our body knows how to release trauma. It is an evolutionary gift. And has kept us alive for thousands of years, is when something challenging happens, that our body knows how to release some of that tension and energy. And movement is one of the key ways that you can do that. So that can be going on a walk, a run, doing yoga, doing dance, doing improv, giving your body space to spontaneously release any excess tension, or to increase your heart rate in your control, where it feels empowering and it feels for you. Those two things can make a difference. For me, people like me who are not as physically able, chair cardio will do that. So lifting your arms up above your heart rate level can give you the same experience. 2, I'll move to organize. So as someone who organizing is not a natural self-soothing tool, for others, organizing their space is a key way to feel like they have a clear mind. And so this is a place of self-care and connection, using clearing your budget, cleaning your desk. Marie Kondoing, before this session, I cleaned my kitchen. And knowing that that is sometimes a have to do, but oftentimes can be a place where we can calm our body and reconnect. One of my favorite elders, she said that she found connection to herself by doing the dishes, and just being over the warm water and gently rubbing in a circular fashion gave her a very meditative state. And so I invite, for those of us that maybe have homes full of dishes to do, that could be a place of connection for yourself. An important space of self-care or collective care is to be able to speak authentically and honestly. And so that's the next place that I want us to head to. We cannot be in a collectively caring environment if we feel like we cannot speak honestly about what we're experiencing, or that we feel like we have to censor other people's truth. Okay. And so one of the things that we do at the Teaching Well is we provide ample time to both check in for people to talk about what they're, we have like 2 to 3 minute check-ins right at the beginning of our weekly meetings, for people to share what's going on in their lives that has nothing to do with the Teaching Well, so that we know who's in front of us and who's coming to this session. So whether you're working with students or whether you work with a team, creating space and time for people to share honestly about who is coming to this meeting and how they're feeling will allow you to navigate as a leader what's needed in this moment. And so for some of that, we've actually been able to take our 3-hour meeting and like go through a 3-hour Zoom meeting, which I think we all know is pretty impressive at this point. And then there's been other times where we've said, it doesn't seem like a 3-hour meeting is going to amplify progress for our clients or for ourselves. Let's cut it at 90 minutes and then be really clear about how we're communicating over text or email to do that. And that all was based on everyone on our team knowing that in our environment that they can make requests, they can ask for support, and they can also share boundaries, knowing that we all are moving towards the collective. And so for some of us, sharing boundaries or speaking our truth is maybe not a normal thing for us, or it doesn't feel very comfortable. And so what I invited you to do is to do small requests and asks. So maybe it's asking your daughter to get you a glass of water. Maybe it's about asking your partner to make dinner for the night. Or maybe it's just saying, I need 10 minutes in the bathroom by myself. I'm going to just take 10 minutes, right? It doesn't need to be these huge boundaries. We want to start where we are, and then we want to invite ourselves to keep claiming and giving space to other people. And I want to be clear, the teaching well comes from a place where we're talking to care providers. And so we oftentimes give lots of space to other people and to the collective. And that what we are advocating for is for you to claim some space so that you can continue to be amazing and give back to your students and to your families. I think the last place to say on Speak is that I have some friends that are similar care providers to me, and we support each other through funny animal texts, through, saying, hey, something's come up with my partner. Can I have 10 minutes where I just talk? And then we get 10 minutes and then we go back to a normal dialogue and exchange. So having one friend or one family member in your Rolodex that that if emotions are getting full and you feel like you might not be able to act within your values, that you have a place to reach out to. And there are many support groups online that and I would highly suggest, if you don't have a therapist, or if you, need some extra support, I suggest you reaching out and getting that so that you can hold the collective with us and just get that extra support. The last two places are the most organic and old ways of finding our way back to collective care. And that is to be in nature and to create. And so I know that there are laws in place from us being in nature, and that we all have different capacity to access nature. And I invite us, whether it's just a plant that we water in our home, to a backyard where we can put our feet in the soil, to going hiking in a local park, that we maintain social distancing and respect for the community. And we also call in the natural need for our bodies to be connected to nature. Nature shows us in metaphor and in actuality the seasons of life, and how after a death of a winter, a rebirth of spring is possible. I am in Tucson, Arizona right now, and I just saw the aspens bloom over the last 4 or 5 days in a way that I wouldn't have before. And it's a reminder and a hope for us. And it's also in Japan, it's called forest bathing. And they've actually done scientific research to show that our hormones balance out if we do 30 to 60 minutes of forest bathing, which is walking in the forest. So there's scientific proof that this is a really valuable tool. And the last tool is to create where you can, when you can, art, creating food for your family, doing a play, like an invisible play game with your child, making new crafts, singing songs with your family, journaling, and laughter. Creating joy and vitality in this time of uncertainty can be a way that we inoculate ourselves from the fear of the unknown. And yeah, maybe you share in the chat box if there's something that I missed that really is of value to you, or something that I shared that resonates with your experience. I'm going to pause there for a moment before we move forward. Are there any questions arising in the chat box, Sonya?
There are a couple of questions, but I think let's take maybe 1 to 2 minutes of silence and let people add reflections and thoughts, and then I can look for themes and we can do a little discussion.
That sounds great. Thank you, Sonya.
I see Lisa sharing a resource as well in the chat box, which is really appreciated. If you have any resources, anything that you have found supportive of your experience during this time that fits into any of these categories or is beyond, feel free to share it as well.
Yeah. And for those of you who are waiting, I invite you, I'm going to give you a tool that you can use with your colleagues or your students called Mirroring the Mime. And it is making shapes on your video screen. So you're going to watch my finger and you're going to try and make those shapes on your screen. So I'm going to make a square. And just noticing what happens in your nervous system as we make this connection. And we connect the body to this experience, to the spatial awareness of looking at the computer screen. And then if you're doing this with a whole group, with a group of students, you can have someone else change the shape. So I'll have Sonya change the shape since most of us are off video.
Our bodies are hardwired to co-regulate and mirror one another, and that is a little bit harder to access virtually. And this is a way to come back into alignment.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. There are a couple of questions that have arisen. So the first is, why do I feel overwhelmed with wanting to incorporate and add non-work goals and activities during this quarantine time? So why am I adding more to my plate, even as I know I am over capacity?
I think that we've been trained societally to try and maximize every single moment. And in this time of shelter in place and pandemic, a lot of what's been asked of us is to be still and to create space for this illness to not be passed on. And so even though we have these external mandates telling us to find stillness, our bodies, our minds are reaching to find normalcy. And normalcy might be creating goals to try and feel productive during this time. And so what I invite for myself, and I constantly am in balance of like creating goals and then being like, I put too many goals on my plate. I was sharing this with Sonya earlier, is an invitation of the moment it does not feel good in my body, that goal is that extra goal I just gave myself no longer feels like it's of service to my body or service to my community, then that is the time for me to just put that goal down. Be like, I'm not held to that goal I created. I can let it go, and that doesn't make me a failure. That makes me being human and knowing that change is inevitable and I'm just changing with this present moment.
Yeah, and I think I just want to add on, this is a similar question that's coming up from a few different people, but even just the recognition of that dissonance is already a step in the right direction. So what I see in this question is someone who is aware of their own body's stress signals to a degree that they understand that they're taking on more that maybe isn't needed during this time. So I think just leaning into that expertise, that wisdom that your body is offering you and being open to listening to it would be what I would say.
Yeah. And I'd invite with that too. And I'm just really thinking about my week, which has been a week that has felt very overwhelming at moments. And how one of the things that has really helped me through that time and specifically with Sonya, has been to be able to talk about the human function curve or talk about my stress levels before they got difficult. So for example, on Monday, I was like, with my broken ankle, I'm just starting to come back to work full time. And I worked 2 full weeks of full time. And then I'm feeling, as I start my 3rd week, maybe I'm not ready. My body's not ready for full time yet. So she said, thank you so much for sharing that. What are there ways that you can take some time off next week so that, even though we might not be able to change the schedule of this week, we can make sure that you get to rejuvenate next week, right? So we were able to talk about it before I got overwhelmed and wasn't unable to make up my commitments, or before we got irritated at each other, or before I was able to just had to disconnect from my partner. And I was able to have those conversations. So creating community around you who respect your boundaries and respect you listening to your body is actually a really vital tool of collective care and self-care.
And it's also something we really want to be modeling for our young people, that in this time of pandemic, the real learnings that our students will take away from this time are how they are held in our care, in their parents' care. And they, I taught kindergarten for 5 years, and one of the big learnings that I took from my 5 years of teaching is kids are sometimes listening to what you say, but they're always watching you, and they're always learning and emulating the behaviors that they see, the tone of voice, the ways that we deal with situations that are difficult. So if we have kids in our home, or we have kids that we're serving, and they see us being extra mindful and slowing down during this time, they will actually be much more grounded, supported, feel much more able to navigate the difficulties of this time. So I see that as one of the biggest responsibilities that we have as educators, is to do our own supportive work of our own bodies and emotional state, so that we can show up better for them.
Beautiful. So I'm looking at the time.
Yep.
And I'd love to move forward, knowing that Carol invited us to have a more informal conversation after, that we're super ready and excited for. But I'm going to move here, and I'll pass it off to Sonya to share a little bit more about our work.
Yeah, and so for those who weren't here at the beginning, before we started the session, Carol had mentioned that we could stay on the call after the formal closing time to keep the conversation going for a few minutes. So we are happy to do that. And before that, we just wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of who we are as an organization and what we offer. And let you know that we are here to support organizations of all kinds during this time. So we primarily work with school communities, districts, unions, charter networks across the nation, but we are also able to support nonprofit organizations, other youth development organizations, social workers, any community of people who are in the business of caring for others. We're called the Teaching Well because we really see everyone who's chosen the profession of caring for others as a well of giving. And there is so much research-based, so many research-based tools that help us deepen our own personal well, so that we can give from a place of groundedness. And as Kelly was sharing when talking about the human function curve, it has this dual benefit of deepening our own capacity and allowing us to feel better while still increasing our ability to show up for. It's kind of this magic combination that caring for ourselves has. And so our work is rooted kind of in the intersection between trauma-informed practices, mindfulness-based practices, racial equity and racial justice work, and an understanding of systems that we have, and our own intimate knowledge of what it means to be an educator. Everyone on our team has taught for at least 5 years and has been in the shoes of the educators that we're serving. So we offer a combination of virtual trainings around stress management, sustainable resourcing of the body, mindful communication, mindful leadership, and so we offer supports both in training form and in coaching form with individuals, with small teams. And we are available to support your organization in this moment if what's needed is to find some more spacious systems and structures during this time, or in the fall when we're transitioning back to navigating the new normal. So you can feel free to reach out to us at info@theteachingwell.org. And I'll put that information in the chat as well. So I think, Carol, maybe we'll close this out, and then we can just end with a couple of mindful breaths together that I'll lead us through.
Do you want to do that first, and then I can do a wrap up into the questions? You want to do mindful breaths first? Okay.
That's great. So let's just take a moment to come back into our bodies. Maybe adjust yourself in your chair to lengthen your spine. And every inhale is an invitation to pull the crown of our head up towards the sky, and every exhale is an invitation to ground our tailbone down into the seat. So let's just take 3 deep breaths here. Breathing in through the nose to lengthen. Breathing out to ground. In to lengthen. And out to ground. Last one, in and out. Coming back. All right.
Great, thank you. There's all the virtual applause from everybody for you all, and such a great session. And I have to say, I just find it so refreshing that your different things were handwritten. Like that was just also such a nice welcome difference there. So thanks for an incredible session. And we will, I'm going to share a couple of events that are coming up in the next couple of weeks so you guys can mark your calendars. And then we'll take some questions for about 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll turn off the recording in just a minute so your questions are private and you all can learn from each other. So I just want to share that Global Minded will have a Teacher Appreciation Week next week. And so this is right in line with appreciating our teachers. And the following week, we're going to do a special event called Celebrating 2020 Graduates. So most of you are on our newsletter. If you're not, you can go on and sign up, and all these different events are posted there. And we just really look forward to working with all of you to support your work and those of your students, especially those who are least resourced, and those who work with them and those who want to hire them. So thank you for making time for this and for taking good care of yourself when you support so many other people walking through this time. And also want to give a shout out to Lisa Wyckoff, because she's doing all of the logistic coordination, which is vast for these different sessions that we're providing. So we'll go ahead and turn off the recording, and I'll mute myself, and then Sonya, you can just tee up the questions that people have put in the chat, and if other people have questions, just go ahead and put them in the